G'day guys, and welcome back to another deck profile. Today we're going to be checking out Sanji. So Sanji is actually a really fun deck to play. Not the most competitive deck out there, but if you draw the right pieces you can be super aggressive in the early game, and if your opponent can't keep up with that pressure, you can usually put yourself in a pretty good place to win. So Sanji is a 5,000 power 4 life leader, dual color, green and blue. The effect is once per turn, and it's not just your turn, so this is both turns. When you play a character with no base effect from your hand, if you have 3 or less characters, set up to 2 of your Don cards as active. So really cool, makes your vanillas all basically 2 less in their cost. But there's some cool shenanigans you can do with gaining some Don on your opponent's turn as well, which we'll go over in just a moment. So with Sanji's effect making vanillas nice and cheap, let's talk about the targets that we have. And we actually have 24 targets for Sanji's effect to trigger with. We'll start with the 2 cost one. So we've got 3 Bellamy from OP1, we've got 3 Jinbei from OP2, and we've got 3 Wire from OP1. So all of these 2 cost 4,000 power, 1,000 counter, all pretty much exactly the same, just different names. But the main thing you want to try and see, especially in your opening hand with Sanji, is you want to see 2 of these in your opening hand, and ideally you want to go second. So when it's your first turn to go, you've got 2 active Don to start with, you'll play one of these, Sanji's effect will trigger, which will restand those 2 Don, allow you to play another one of these. So come your next turn, when you can first attack, you've got to swing with your Sanji, you attach a Don to each of the characters you have on board. You've got 3 swings at 5k on your first turn, which is absolutely insane. So great way to be nice and aggressive in the early game. Moving on to the next group of vanillas, we are running 4 Usopp from OP2. So 3 cost, 5,000 power, 1,000 counter, nice vanilla there. We are also running 4 Zoro from OP2. 4 cost, 6,000 body. And the blue counterpart of that, of Zoro, we are running 4 Gecko Moria. So same stats there as Zoro. And then to round off the vanillas, we are running 3 Mihawk from OP2. 6 cost, 8,000 power, 1,000 counter. So all of these are 2 cheaper thanks to Sanji, which is super nice. So 1, 2, 2, 4 cost. And depending on what kind of your matchup is, you want to go for the bigger bodies. So generally if you're going to get something like Whitebeard, you want to see more of these guys rather than the 2 cost ones, just because it'll be a bit easier for you to get those swings in at the big dude himself. But yeah, all of these nice and cheap thanks to Sanji. And a lot of your defensive options are either around trying to protect Sanji or protect these, so you can keep applying good pressure in terms of your swings. As I said in the beginning, if you can get a good start and then stop your opponent from dealing with the pressure of the extra attacks and extra bodies, then you're usually in a pretty good place. But also, as I said before as well, thanks to Sanji's effect, you can quite easily rebuild a board if your opponent does happen to clear some things. So generally you only want to have 2 or 3 characters on there, so you can always make sure you can trigger your Sanji's effect. Now in terms of the defensive characters that we are running, the first that we're running 2 of the starter deck captain kids. So the 7 cost 7,000 power, no counter, blocker, but the effect is if you have a Don attached, you can reactivate the character at the end of your turn. So basically you're popping a Don underneath, you're going to swing for 8k at something, end of the turn happens, you're going to restand, and you have a blocker at 7k on your opponent's turn, which is super nice. The other kind of essentially blocker that we're running 2 of the OP1 captain kid. 8 cost, 8,000 power, no counter. Effects are if you have 1 Don attached and it's on your opponent's turn and this card is rested, your opponent is forced to attack any Eustace captain kid character. So they have to clear this before they can start swinging at your Sanji or your other vanilla characters that you have on board. So yeah, great way to be annoying with some defensive stuff going on right there. The other effect is you can rest this character and play something with a cost of 3 or less from your hand, which is all of these guys right here, which is 11 or 12 of them right there. And you can play that out. You can trigger Sanji's effect through that as well, as long as you don't have more than 3 with the one that you play out there. So super cool way to just restand some Don, so allow you to play more characters or set yourself up to make some defensive plays with your event cards and on your opponent's turn. The next 4 cards that we have are in the deck for some defensive options, but they're kind of flex spots, so you can kind of really use these for anything that you really want. The first up that we are running 2 Ezo from OP1. So 3 cost 3000 body, 2k counter. Kind of the main reason it's in there for that 2k counter. This is actually the only 2k counter that I run in the deck. All the characters that are counters are 1k, but then we have heaps of event cards that kind of make up for the lack of the 2k counters, which we'll see. The on-play effect is also quite handy sometimes as well. You can rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So you can bring this off kid as well, so you can use all your Don to bring out the kid, bring that out, rest something, and then you can swing over with something else you might have on board. Yeah, it's a great way to kind of control your opponent's board presence, which works really well in your favor for the Sanji gameplay style. And the last defensive option that we are running is another blocker. We're running 2 of the Doflamingo from OP1. So it's a 3 cost 4000 body, 1000 counter blocker. This on plays, you can look at the top 5 cards of your deck and place them at the top or the bottom of your deck in any order. So really good to try and make sure you're ordering your cards into the resources that you really need. So whether you're in need of characters, you can stack the characters to the top of the deck. If you need of defensive event options, you can stack them. And if you see something that's going to be absolutely trash, you can always pop them all at the bottom of your deck and hope that the next 5 cards next couple of cards you draw are a lot better. As I said, these are flex spots. You can run all Doflamingos, you can run all Ezos, you can swap these out for more vanillas or more events. There's plenty of options with these 4, but this is kind of what I found to be most useful for me at this point in time. Alright, before I mention there's going to be a lot of events, and there's 18 of them in the deck here. We'll start with the 2 cost ones. We got 2 Overheat. So Overheat, as I said, 2 cost event. The counter is it gives a leader or character of 4000 power for the battle. The secondary part of the effect is you can then return up to 1 active character with a cost of 3 or less to your owner, to the owner's hand. So great one to kind of bounce back would be your own Ezo, or you can kind of use that to kind of control your opponent's board presence right there as well. You can even maybe do it with the Doflamingo, so you can redo the search. You can stack another 5 cards if you didn't like the first 5 that you saw, but you generally don't want to bounce that because that is a blocker as well. The next event that we are running 2 Repel. So same as the Overheat, it's a 4000 buff to a character or leader. Then the secondary part of the effect there is you can set one of your Don as active. So if you leave yourself with 3 Don at the end of your turn, you can play the Repel, cost 2, restand 1, leaves you another 2, so you can use an Overheat or another Repel or one of the other 2 cost options that we will be talking about in just a moment. Sorry, I forgot to mention the trigger effect for Overheat. It is you can return up to 1 card with a cost of 4 or less to the owner's hand. So great way to control board presence or use a similar effect that we were talking about before to bounce back your Ezo, other things that you want to try and protect that you know may go down. Next up, we are running 4 Punk Gibson. Punk Gibson, we're maxing out on Punk Gibson just because it's a crack card. So just like the previous 2, it's a 4k buff to a character or leader in battle. Then the other effect is you can rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less, so stopping 2 attacks in 1 card, absolutely insane. And the trigger is you can rest anything, which is also absolutely insane. So great way to just kind of control how much your opponent is attacking you if it does get to that point where it's quite overwhelming, which can sometimes happen with Sanji. The next and final 2 cost event that we're running Love Love Mellow. So same as all the others, it's a 4k buff to a character or leader in battle. Then the other effect is you can draw 1 card if you have 3 cards or less in your hand. So usually you want to save Love Love Mellow towards the end when you're low on resources, so you can replenish, you can draw yourself into another counter or another character that you may need, that sort of stuff. Alright, moving on to the last of the events that we have. The 3 cost one. So the first one we are running 3 sword style onigiri. So the counter is up to one of your character's leaders gets a 6000 buff during the battle. Then the secondary effect is you can then play up to one character card with a cost of 3 or less with no effect from your hand. So that's all 13 of these guys right here, which we've shown off before, can all be played off 3-sword style. And this helps trigger Sanji's effect on your opponent's turn. So you can, if you have 3 active Don, you can play this, stopping an attack. You'll then play one of these, which will then trigger Sanji's effect, which will restand 2 Don, which will allow you to use any of your 2 cost events again. So yeah, just great way to just recycle your Don and make sure you always have access to some great defensive plays. The last event that we're running 2 Deathwink, another 3 cost counter, same as the 3-sword style, gives a 6,000 buff to a character leader in battle. And then the last part of that effect is you can then draw cards so that you have 2 cards in your hand. So similar to your Love Mellow, you want to leave it towards the end when you have limited resources, just so you can replenish that hand, gain some more defensive plays, or gain more of those characters you need to apply pressure on your turn. And the trigger effects for these guys are 3-sword style. The trigger is you can rest up to one of your opponent's characters or leaders with the cost of 5 or less, wild. And then the Deathwink's trigger is you can return up to 1 character with the cost of 7 or less to the owner's hand. So both their triggers can be quite useful, especially when you're under a lot of pressure with character presence or attacks. So lots of defensive plays in Sanji, which is what we really need. As I said, we're lacking in 2K counters, but we're making up for it in the event category. Alright, there is the deck in all of its glory. There is some gameplay up on the channel if you want to see how it goes. But thank you so much for checking out the video. Let us know what you think of the deck, what you like, what you don't like, what you do differently. But make sure you stay beautiful, and we'll see you all in the next one.